Welcome, I'm Charles Brock. When I first started woodworking, I was a flatboarder, but then I saw the beautiful work of Sam Maloof, and it inspired me to become a sculptured furniture maker. Let's go! Let's start with the seat because everything connects to the seat. So this is going to be our first project. You need to make a project out of the seat, the back legs, front legs, headrest, arms. Put them all together. That's the best way to work here. But when we start with the seat, there's something you need to know. About 5 or 6 years ago, I started updating or evolving in how I was making the rocker. And the seat is a big change. Instead of a 22-inch deep seat, I now only make a 21-inch seat. And your patterns are based on this 21-inch deep seat. So that's the first change. And it's the first thing for you to notice, that your seat boards, when you make them up, need to just be 21 inches long. So, when you mill up your stock, not only do you need to make the stock 21 inches long, it needs to be 1 3/4 of an inch thick for the seat boards. I used to ask that you go a full 2 inches if you could, but 1 3/4 gives you just the right amount of thickness. You want it to look, you want it to be kind of robust, but at the same time, you want it to be very elegant as far as a seat. So 1 3/4 is what I always do now. And then width. You're going to start out with a 4 1/4 inch wide seat board. And then we're going to go from there. So let's go over and we're going to cross cut the last seat board to 21 inches. Let's do it now. The next thing is to square them all up and then decide which is going to be the front and which is going to be the back, which board's going to be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. And you want to number those boards from left to right. So let's take a look at how do you decide which board is going to go where. All right, so each board has its own color. There's some sapwood here, and I know that sapwood can be used to really move the eye and make the project or the seat more interesting. So there's a little sapwood there. We're just going to go through the boards and take a look at them and see what's interesting and where the board should go, where it should be used. There's a little more color there, and this is going to be the back here. So we'll leave that one maybe in the middle although this is a really interesting board here. It's got a lot of figure in it. Let's put it in the middle. So we'll put it there. And let's get it all squared up. Yeah, I think that's good. There's nothing like a good big square to help you figure out something like this. All right, so this is going to be seat board number 1, seat board number 2, number 3, number 4. Let's see. Number 4, and then number 5. What we'll do is we'll come in about 1.25 inches, and this line's going to help us with alignment, especially when we're gluing up. And so I'm going to use red because red always gets your attention. Gets my attention. I use it all the time. All right, so I have a red line here, and that's going to help. And now we're ready to take a look at where we're going to place the bevels on these seat boards when we put them together, because we want it to have a smile. Now we're making the regular smile seat. On my website, you can also look at the big smile seat. It's a little harder. I would suggest it maybe for your second chair, but we've got a whole video on making the big smile seat. But this is a good place to start right here. Let me show you where to place the bevels making this seat. So I've numbered it on the front of each board too, which is going to be helpful. I like marking out for my projects. It gives me a plan, then I kind of know where to go then. All right, so I'm going to overdo this, and we're going to place some lines on here that'll help me know where the bevels are going to be placed on each of the boards. So we're going to take 3 degrees off of the edge of board number 3. That's what we're going to do first. Board number 2 is going to have a 90-degree edge on the inside here, but on the outside, we're going to cut a bevel that way. And then board number 1 will be 90 degrees on both edges. Well, if we move over to board number 4, then we're going to place a bevel going in that direction. And again, board number 5 is like board number 1, and that it's 90 degrees. So now let's start with board number 3, and let's prepare it. Let's prepare it for taking it to the joiner and joining a 3-degree bevel on the edge. Now I'm making these marks because that way when the bevel is placed on the entire edge of the board, these marks will be gone. And since we're going to place bevels on both surfaces, or both edges, I'm making my marks on both of these. And it's important to go edge to edge like that. Now, board number 2, we've got a bevel to place here, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to drag it from edge to edge. And then board number 4, same thing. You can also use chalk for this or a white pencil. All right. Now, to set our 3-degree bevel, I'm going to show you some tools that really work wonderfully well together. These are 2 very valuable tools. This is called a bevel boss, and I don't think a bevel boss, the bevel boss is still available, but there are some others just like this that aren't all that expensive, but all you do with these is use these as the standard in your shop for setting angles. The idea came from boat yards where they made wooden boats years ago, and they would, all the carpenters or boat builders would come set their bevels for a particular job, and everybody would have the same 6 degrees or 3 degrees. It's a great tool. So I'm setting the sliding bevel at 3 degrees and then locking it down. But there's something here you always need to be careful of, and that is if you have some hanging out at the bottom, it's not going to allow you to sit it on the joiner or the table saw, miter gauge or whatever, and do a good job of it. So you got to pull it till this is out of the way. Now I've got it set for 3 degrees. I can travel with this, and as long as I don't move it, I can go to the miter gauge or I can go to the joiner, and I can copy that 3 degrees. This time, let's go to the joiner. This is the corner that needs to go into the corner that the fence and the bed of the joiner make. And so that's one reason it's good to lay this out on your board. So I'm going to push it back against the fence. See how all the white is gone? I counted the passes. It took 3 passes to do that. And so now we're ready to do the other side, and I'm going to take 3 off over here. Remember to keep count of your passes, because taking the same amount of passes on each of the edges of the board to apply the bevels will keep your seat symmetrical. And everybody wants a symmetrical seat. Well, you can see here that we have 3 degrees off of the edge of each side of board number 3. And what you have left is actually an isosceles trapezoid, which is kind of easy for me to say. All right. The next thing is to take the 3 degrees off of the outside edges of boards 2 and 4. Let's do that now. Now you can see we've got 3 degree bevel here, 3 degree bevel there on board number 3. On the outside edge of board number 4, we have 3 degrees, and we have a 3 degree bevel on the outside of board number 2. Now, let's put a clamp on it and see if we get that little bit of smile. Okay, let's see if this makes a nice little smile by pulling those bevels together. And we can also check our joints, make sure that they're going to pull up nice and tight. That looks great. Now let's find the locations for our, if you're going to use a biscuit joiner, that's fine. If you're going to use a domino, I'm going to be using a domino. Both of them work well. The biscuit joiner doesn't impart as much strength across the seat. The domino is for reference. In other words, just like with the biscuit joiner, keeping the boards from sliding all around. It'll keep them in place, and the domino will impart a little more strength across the seat. But both work just fine. So I'm going to come 5 inches from the front here and just make a mark. And then I'm going to come 5 inches in from the back, and I'm going to make a mark. Now I'm going to split the difference. There's like 11 inches between the two, so at 5.5, I'm going to make a mark. And then with everything squared up nicely, what I need to do is to draw some little short lines right here, and that'll help me with the placement. So I've got 3 places where they're all going to come together, where the boards join, that we're going to reinforce with biscuits or dominoes. Now I don't draw lines all the way across, because after a while with so many lines it could get confusing. I'm going to mark all of those locations using a square, and next to the bottom of the board I'm going to put an X there. That will help me with exact placement of my dominoes or biscuits. So I'm going to be marking all of them. All right, now I'm going to show you how to use the Festool domino to make some great mortises so we can put this together. I use an 8 by 50 millimeter Festool domino. It takes 12 of them. And to install those into mortises, I use the domino machine. Let me go show you how it's done. This is the Festool domino. Here's what happens when you turn it on. It oscillates while it spins, so it's kind of like a drill or a router in that it's got a cutter on it, but as it moves back and forth, it makes a specifically wide mortise so that the little compressed domino can fit into it. Now, I use the middle setting for width, which gives you a little room as far as width on each side of the domino. That helps when you put it all together. Sometimes if you're off just a little bit, if you use this tight setting here, it would make a problem. So why not take advantage of a little extra kind of accordion room there? So there are 3 different things you have to do, 3 different ways to make these mortises in the seat. Board number 3 has got a 3-degree bevel on its edge. What I want to do is to use this as a reference surface. And I want to use this to reference from as I rotate it against the 3 degrees right here. All right, so I'm going to lift it up against this surface and I'm going to hold it steady. And I'm also using my fingers to hold down the board so it'll stay still. I'm plunging in, cutting the mortise. I'm letting it retreat, and then I'm setting it down. Now, I'm going to do the rest of them. All right, this is the third way that we go about using the domino to make the mortises in these seat boards. Now, the problem right now is we can't do it the way we did before because we can't read that angle if the board is face up. The top of the board, the part of the board has the number on it for board number 2 here is up. So this doesn't work. So you've got to flip it over so that the bottom of the board is up. Now that presents us with a new situation. How in the world do we read the angle? Well, let's just hold it up, put it in place, and just tighten up the fence. And if everything's flush, like it is right now, we've got our 3 degrees set right here. Now we've got to figure out how high, or the placement on this line. This is the bottom of the board. I'm going to write B here so I can keep up with the bottom of the board and know I'm working off the right side of the board. And so let's look here. Now the way we can do that is we can take a marking gauge. All right, so now I know exactly, I have it set right here, how deep that goes to the top of that little arc. Now I can turn this over, and again using the bottom of the board like this, I can make a mark right through there, and that is going to be the center of for my placement of the domino right there. Now, I'm also going to take a pencil and I'm going to highlight that a little bit so I can see it. It's important to be able to see that. Now I can finish setting up the domino to make this mortise right there at that center, and I'm going to show you how. I placed a white line right here across the bottom of the board so that I could sight that through this little triangle right here. Okay, and now I've got everything set. I've got the angle, I've got it set, it sits flush here. I've got this little edge on that pencil line, and now I've got the white line to guide me. I'm good. Let's go. Well, that was seat board number 2, and now I'll do seat board number 4, and we can put it together. Let's do it now. Everything fits together nicely. Got a nice little smile here. Seatboard 1 and seatboard 5, they level out and are parallel to our bearing surface here, so we can do our joinery on those boards. We'll find the center of our seat and we'll mark a center line all the way around. Then we're trying to make a 20-inch wide panel here that's 21 inches deep. And so we'll find out how much we need to take off of each side to make that 20-inch panel. And then we'll be ready to draw our line that'll show us where the seat bowl is. This is working out great. Come with me, we'll take the next step. All right, so I cut on the waist side, but I left just a little bit so that I could take it across the joiner and clean it up to make a nice crisp 90 degrees. Here we go. Okay, now you need to find your seat pattern. It's a half a seat pattern, and since we made this center line here, we're going to use it to line up the seat pattern, and we're going to take the back edge of the seat pattern all the way to the back of the seat. How about that? And then over here, we're going to flush it out with the side. If it's a little bit long or short, it has to do with the length of your seat, and we'll just extend that on out in this situation. Do the same thing again. And now we've got our seat bowl. Nothing like a seat bowl. And later on, we're going to sculpt all the way to the bottom. But we're also going to use the bandsaw. That's going to help us with a lot of that. So I'm just going to extend this right here and extend that right there. All right, now we've got seat boards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Before we start sculpting, we need to lay out and cut our joinery in seat board number 1 and seat board number 5. Let me show you how. Well, this is seat board number 1, so in seat boards 1 and 5, we're going to put a two-sided notch in the back outside corner, and that's why I placed an X right there, so I would know where to place it. The first measurement is to come in 3 inches from the back of the seat board and make yourself a little mark with a marking knife. Now, I use a knife, I don't use a pencil. A pencil line is wider. A pencil line is also, if it's made with something that's not a mechanical pencil, as it gets more and more blunt, the line will get wider, and so you can't use that. But a marking knife, the curve from a marking knife will give you something to cut to. And several passes with a knife here. Don't mark all the way across the board. All right, I'll make several cuts or passes with the knife. I won't come all the way across the board either, because that might be confusing. I'm just going to come in the equivalent of about 2.5 inches. And I've got this marking gauge set at 2.5 inches, and that's the measurement from the outside. And you don't roll these gauges, you just pull it, and now that's left a nice cut line there. And so now sometimes on end grain you might roll it just a bit, but all right, there we go. Come on around the corner. I'm going to mark it on both sides. A great thing about a cut line is I can see the kerf right there, so I have no problem in coming around the corner and making it continuous. All right, if you want to, you can take a 5mm mechanical pencil, and if it'll help you see it, you can use that on the line, and the little bit of glare sometimes helps you at the helps you when you're at the table saw to hit that line. All right, so this is what we're going to cut out right here. 3 inches by 2.5 inches. And you'll be able to see that at the bottom of your screen. It took me a couple of years to find the perfect way to make this cut. Tried a lot of different things. But you don't want anything flopping around like the fence on a miter gauge or whatever. This is a lot of cut at one time. It's actually a kind of a standing rip cut. Now it's going to cut, I'm cutting 2 7/8 of an inch deep here. Now, the mark is at 3 inches, so I want to leave a little bit so that when I make the cross cut and cut to the line, I'll have a little bit left in the corner that I can take out with a chisel, and I'll show you that. Now, so I made a what's basically a tenoning jig to hold the board upright, to have a nice stout fence or a ledger board that I could clamp, so I could clamp the board to it, and I could line up my cut mark here so that I'll be cutting to the inside on the waist side of the cut. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we'll make a cross cut. And of course we have to do the same thing on seat boards 1 and seat board 5. So here we go. Now I'll set up the crosscut sled on the table saw and we'll make the crosscut. The joinery really requires use of a crosscut sled. It's the best way to make crosscuts that will yield a perfectly square joint. So you need to make a crosscut sled that will cut square. It's as simple as that. So to make this this crosscut on the notch for the back leg, we want to set the height of the blade, and you see where if you pull the blade up here, we're going to be almost at the top of that cut. That'll leave a little bit in the corner of this notch, and we can knock it out with a nice sharp chisel. So that's how to set it. Now, we want to set the tooth on that cut line. And now we're ready to make the cut. Let's go. Now I have a little bit, like I said, left in the corner that we can get out with a sharp chisel. Let's go do that now. First, I'm going to cut in on the cross-cut side. If I start with the rip-cut side, then I may split the board, and you don't want to do that. So we'll start here. Now we want to lay out the front leg notch. It's going to be a three-sided affair. Sounds interesting, huh? So again, because it's very important, we're building a 21-inch deep seat, and so it's 17 inches from the back of the board to the back of your front leg notch. 17 inches. Now, once you make a cut line there, then you need to go 1 3/4 of an inch, and I've set my caliper for 1 3/4 of an inch, and I'm making a little dent here with the leg of the caliper, and then I can take my square and my knife, make a nice cut line right here, and that's going to be the front of my front leg notch right there, 1 3/4 of an inch apart. Now let's take those marks around the edge of the board. There we go, right there. And again, you can feel the knife fit into that kerf, and that will help you go around the edge of the board. Then on the bottom, we're just going to go not any more than a 1/2 inch, because the notch is only going to be 1/4 of an inch deep. Now you want to set your wheel type marking gauge at 1/4 of an inch. I can use the edge of the board here, make my cut line, and now I have something to cut to. Of course, I'm going to do this on the other board also. So seat boards 1 and 5 both have the same notches for the front and the back legs. Then I'll go to the table saw and I'll show you how to cut the front leg notch. I've got the blade really low here because our height of cut is only going to be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to make consecutive cuts and raise it up slowly until I hit the bottom of this line right here. And then I'll know I've got it set at 1/4 of an inch, and I'll start in the middle and then I'll cut out to the edges, and we'll have a nice notch. I've got some little helper lights that run by batteries. They're little LED lights. I've got them set up on my crosscut sled so that I can actually see. So let's go and see what we get. Right here you can see that I haven't cut all the way to those cut lines. Well, to do that, I'm going to set the outside of the tooth of the blade right on that line. Now, I'm using a special blade that is made for joinery. It's a special grind forest woodworker 2 blade, and one edge of the alternating bevels is ground flat. It's a #1 grind. Look for it in your tool supplier. They should have a forest #1 grind woodworker 2 blade. It's perfect for joinery like this. Gives you a pretty flat bottom right here, flatter than the alternating bevel blades. So, but right here we still need to clean it up a little bit. Let me introduce to you a router plane. It's the perfect tool for making sure that's just as flat and smooth as it needs to be. The reason this surface needs to be nice and flat is because when we take this notch to the router table, we'll have a rabbiting bit mounted in the router table with a pilot bearing that is going to rub against this surface as a reference for making the shoulders of the rabbet. Any bumps that you have right here will be telegraphed into that shoulder, and so we don't want that. Now, when you start to make your cut, be sure to look at the grain here. That'll give you a clue as to the way it might cut best. So this is a great tool. You'll use it over and over and over again. You can use a handheld electric router to make the rabbets. I have found it's much better if you've got a nice flat router table to use a router table. I've got a rabbiting bit in here that is from Whiteside. It is a 1.5 inch diameter. That's from the outside of the carbide cutter here to the other outside of the carbide cutter. It's 1.5 inches in diameter. So when it cuts and it gets to this corner, it's going to make a 3/4 inch radius round corner here. Now that's going to make it perfect for taking a 3/4 inch rounding over bit and using it in order to make the mating piece that's going to be the leg. So 1.5 inches in diameter for the rabbiting bit, and it does cut a 1/2 inch deep. And so I've got it making is almost a full cut. You've got to set it so that it is just maybe a 1/16 or even less deeper than the edge of the tabletop here. And that's so you won't get kind of a fuzzy cut. You want a nice sharp cut there. And so at the router table, the important thing to know is that the work has to go from right to left. It's going to go in this direction. Now we don't have a fence, as you see, but we've got a starter pin. It's called a starter pin because that's where you start. And I'm going to place on this back notch, I'm going to place the starter pin back this way, and then I'm going to use it as leverage to cut in toward that pilot bearing at about 7:30. I've made kind of a clock face here on my insert, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and at 7:30 we're going to rock. So we're going to start here, have the wood against the starter pin, slide in at about 7:30, and then you can come off the starter pin, and as you'll see, we'll follow along and complete the cut. All right, you'll have a couple of questions probably. One, here on the back edge, we've got where we came into that cut, we've got a little bit of a radius here. You can take a chisel and you can cut that right off in case that gets in the way of you fitting the leg in. Out here, we've got a little bit of chipping. And that's fine because this is in a waste area. Actually, that's going to be in a little bit of a waste area too. So don't worry with trying to reinforce the cut. Some's going to chip off, but it's going to be in a waste area, believe me. What I like to do here so that I know where to plunge in with a rabbiting bit is I want to visually kind of divide that into thirds. Here's a third, and another third. So I want to aim for the router bit for the pilot bearing to hit right along in here. So now I'm going to use the starter pin and I'm going to aim for that point right there and plunge in. Let's see what happens. So let me review this for you. I'm going to plunge in, then I'm going to go in that direction. I'm going to tap the pilot bearing on the shoulder here, and then make what's called a little climb cut. Remember I told you you always went right to left? Well, this is a little bit of left to right, just to tap that other shoulder back to the middle and out. That's the way you do it. Don't worry about this chipping. It's in a waste area. When you sculpt your seat, it'll all be gone anyway. Now we're ready to excavate the seat bowl. And what that means is we're going to get rid of the wood we don't need, and we're going to end up with, I hope, a beautifully shaped seat bowl, a saddle, one that we can kind of sit down into, that has a pommel rising in the front and the bottom of the seat bowl back here, and that is very nice in the way it flows into that seat bowl. We want to make it comfy. That's the key word, is making it comfy. So, where are we going to start? Let's start with seat board number 3, like we've done before, and then we'll work our way out. We're going to remove a lot of material with the bandsaw. And because we're coopering the seat, that allows us to do that. So the first thing we'll do with seat board number 3 is we're going to draw with a pattern from the back of the seat board here all the way to the front. And so I want the pattern to lay at this point right here as the back of the seat bowl comes up. Line up this point with that, and in the front, let it kind of flush out at this bottom corner right here. So I'm going to hold it in place, take a Sharpie, and we'll draw it. All right, there we go. Now, we're going to turn it over and mark it on the other side too. So, right here is one place to mark it, or to line it up. And in the front, let's line it up there. Mark it with a Sharpie. All right, now, we want to protect our pommel. This is where the pommel is going to be. In fact, the pommel is going to come back about 5 inches. And the pommel is that high part, kind of like a small fin that is in the middle of seat board number 3. So we've got that marked. Now, I don't want you to cut your pommel off when you go to the bandsaw. So a good thing to do right here is I'm going to come back and make a line, and I will just, as I'm cutting, I will come out here. And that will leave this pommel area up here for me to shape with a grinder. Same thing right here. Let's see. And I just want to make sure as I'm cutting that I come out here. If you continue going forward on this line, then you'll cut your pommel off, and you definitely don't want to go through life without your pommel. That gets this side, but because we have the 3-degree bevels that we're cutting it off of, we've still got a little bit to cut right here. And what will remain is kind of a line right down the middle, kind of a seam that we'll just clean up with the grinder. So let's cut this side too. Now we want to mark out the pommel so we'll know where we need to take off material. And so right here is where this line runs out, and so we're just going to make a line between there and the pommel area, or the pommel line in the center here. Now we've got a proper target, and we can grind this off with I'm going to use a Festool grinder. There are a lot of grinder options out there, but I will show you how I do it. The fun begins. If you don't like shaping the seat of this chair, you're doing the wrong project. Now, I'm going to make myself some marks so that I know where I'm being effective, because this is the area I am going to work on. And I also want to make some marks from this line right here, because my first job is to knock this whole edge off at about 45 degrees to the face of this board. And you'll see how I do that. All right, so I'm ready to begin. Now, this is a Festool RAS 115 grinder. It is a great tool for this. It's got steel gears. It will just run and run and run. It's got a lot of torque, a lot of power, and I've got 24 grit Saphir, S-A-P-H-I-R, paper on this. It's like rocks glued to paper, and it will remove a lot of material quickly, but you can also work slowly and delicately with it too. It's a fine tool. I'm going to work right down to this line at 45 degrees. Okay, I'm marking this out again because I want to see where I'm being effective. And so right here, I need to mark it all the way down to this corner, and I'm going to try to just flatten that at about 45 degrees, just kind of make a So now we're trying to grind down to this black line that I made right here at an angle. Now I want to get on top of this ridge right here, and I'm going to flatten it, and then I'll do something special. Kind of pulling away from the pommel line here, and it'll kind of shape it up. So I'm making good progress here. I'm going to mark everything out again and then really try to make kind of a concave surface from here all the way up to the front of the pommel or front of the seat board. I'm going to use the shape of the tool to impart a concave surface right through here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but anything I can do now can really be useful. The main thing is to keep this line true, because I'm going to use it to trace onto the next board, board number 2 or board number 4. That's the plan. Now I'm going to take out this little ridge here down the middle from the 2 bandsaw cuts. It's left, just needs to be smoothed out. And then I've got an area back here that is inside the seat bowl, but inside this black line for the seat bowl. I want to take it out now. And then I think we'll be ready to do the other side, and we can move on. Okay, the sculptor has to use all the senses pretty much, including touch. Touch is very, very important. You need to feel, make sure it's nice and smooth, make sure it's the shape that you want. Well, over here I could feel that I have more work to do. I'm going to turn it around and let you watch me finish this other side. You may have noticed that as I do this, I keep my elbows in, keep my arms kind of locked to me, and I try to rock in line with the curve that I'm trying to make. In other words, I'm not out here doing this. I'm kind of tight like this, and I can kind of rock. Sometimes having a nice wheeled stool like this kind of helps too. I can kind of glide along like that. But control is the main factor in doing good sculpting like this. I can feel of it now. It feels right. It's time to take this to the bench and mark out seat boards number 2 and 4. Now you think it would be very easy to use seat board number 3 to mark out seat board number 2 and number 4. But that would be a mistake, because we have this 3-degree bevel on the outside of 2 and the outside of 4. So if it was marked here it could cause a problem with being very thin on the other side and maybe going too deep. So we don't want to cut it like that. What we do want to do though is we want to swap the boards. And by doing that, we can cut it on the bandsaw, cut this line that we're fixing to make with the seat board standing straight up at the bandsaw. So let's do that. Let's swap the boards. All right, so I've got 2 over here, and then I've got 4 over here. Now, when you start to make these marks, you realize, well, I don't want to make a mark all the way back here because that doesn't line up with my the back of my seat bowl. So the other secret is to move it back and then trace to the bottom of the seat bowl, then move it forward and finish. The other one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull it back, trace to the bottom of the seat bowl, then slide it forward and finish. All right, now let's go to the bandsaw and cut on those lines. All right, now we can do a little bit of a reverse and to have a guide, a line that we can use to finish the seat bowl up for boards 2 and 4. We can just use the center board here, seat board 3, against seat board number 4, and we can make a little curve there. Then take the grinder and take that out. We'll put an X right there, and we'll take this off, make it just sweep right down into the seat real well, using this line on the inside, tracing seat board number 3 into seat board number 2 there. All right, let's go to the grinder and we'll have some fun. All right, now I'm going to do the other one, and we'll have a pair. Now we're going to use seat board 2 as a pattern to lay out a line on seat board 1. Now we're going to use the grinder to shape seat boards 1 and 5. But first, we're going to put a line here, or a little mark there, and then connect this point to that point, and the same thing on the front over there. And that's going to give us a target. Just like I did around the pommel on seat board 3, I made some lines to give myself a target on the front of 1 and 5. Now I can take the grinder, or the Festool RAS 115, and I'm going to make kind of a twist over here, and it will blend everything together, and then when we glue it up, our seats will be ready for the next step. All right, so I'm going to start out just marking this out. I really need to know where I'm working effectively and what my tool is doing, so this is real important. And I'll continue to mark out till I've finished shaping this the way I want to shape it. First thing is to make a 45-degree facet or flat all the way down this line. But I have got to keep it above the line. I just want to be above the line and work down to that line. That's going to help me impart that little twist that you find here. And that twist is so important. So let's get started. The most important thing now is to be able to see where I've worked and see where I need to work. And marking out will help me do that. I did a dry fit of all 5 parts. I wanted to check, make sure when these clamps are in place and all the dominoes are in place that everything closes up, all the joints. And all this looks really good. All right, so now I'm ready for the real thing. Now, one of the things that I'm always asked is, do I let the glue get down into the holes? Do I glue the dominoes or the biscuits in? And the answer is not intentionally. They're mainly there for strength and to add strength across grain. They are mainly there to add strength across grain and as a reference from one board to another. Because without them, boards would be squirting everywhere when you put glue on them. And you definitely want to watch your red line, make sure that it's in the proper position. So we're just going to build this seat one board at a time. And you still got to do a lot of shaping, so I'm not that interested in where the glue goes as long as it doesn't go on my bench top. And try to keep it off my clothes. I have ruined more than one good shirt doing this. Kind of moves along pretty quickly. I just want to spread the glue and get it on all surfaces, on both boards that come together. I'm using Titebond 3. Something I'm normally asked. I use Titebond 3 for Gluing together my seats, you have a transparent glue line when you sculpt through it, and that is important. Make sure that you don't have any little bits of wood or any kind of trash or whatever that will keep the boards from coming together when they're clamped. And it's an unhappy time when things won't pull up because you got a little piece of trash there. Don't worry so much about the glue running down the face of your seat, because you're going to have to grind all that off anyway as you shape it. And it'll come off pretty easy. All right, now let's see if everything will pull up and make me smile. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to smooth all of the transitions between the boards and smooth the seat out in general. And we're going to work kind of in quadrants, like this is going to be the first two quadrants we'll work in. And then finally, we'll work here and work here. So I'm going to start here in this corner, and I'm going to work toward, using the grinder, I'm going to work toward the middle. Everything is going to go in this direction. And this is going to be kind of the target, because that is the bottom of the seat bowl. So we're just going to keep pulling down toward the bottom, and we're going to use, I'm going to use my fingers, I'm going to touch, I'm going to use a red pencil here or something that contrasts so that I can tell when the red pencil goes away at these joints right here, at these transitions, then we'll know that we've got it smoothed out from one board to the next. So I'm going to start here and move in that direction. Now, right here, probably the hardest place to get, the place that takes the most time and effort, is to transition away from the seat bowl line here down to the next board, and to make it a nice little sweep. The sweep right here is fairly shallow, but this is going to be a little deeper of a sweep. And so we can get a lot of it with, we can get a lot of it or all of it with the grinder and the 24 grit Saphir paper, but sometimes it's real nice to do this with a nice gouge. Play some nice comforting music and get the thrill of using a good hand tool. So if you like hand tools, you can use this to kind of cut this away. And work on this transition. You want this to have a nice little curve. And so if you hold the gouge and you make that curve like this, you'll impart that curve. And so work up to the line, but don't take the line. Keep the line. Try to stay inside that line. So that's one way to go about it. The other way, of course, is with the grinder. But if you get rid of some of this material right now, it makes the grinding a little easier. Nothing like the use of a good hand tool. Now I'm going to work this part for you right here. The other part will be just the same. And then later on we'll come back when the chair's legged up, and I'll show you how to work the front end. And by that time it'll be pretty easy. Notice how I'm swinging in and coming up. In case you want to know, this happens to be a Swiss-made gouge, and it's a number 3 gouge as far as the curve here of the sweep, they call it, and it's 35 millimeters wide. And it's a great all-purpose gouge to have in your shop, and I suggest that you get something similar. It's great for paring plugs off and just all kinds of things. And it works real well if you need to chase a relative off. It's big enough that they'll respect it. And the pad fits nicely right in this corner. I wonder why. It could have been kind of designed for that. I think we can, everything needs to go toward the middle here. This needs to be the lowest spot on the seat. And I think after I finish this other quarter over here, we'll be ready to add some legs and get this baby legged up. Hey, I tell you what, this is fun.